let's have a good day today up to this point. There is breaking news that is taking place right now in the UK. As I recounted yesterday or the day before yesterday, that Theresa May's deal was going to once again come up for a vote. Now, if you remember, Berkow has said he wasn't going to allow this deal to come up for a vote again if it hasn't been substantially changed. Because again, what's the point of a parliamentary vote if you can keep bringing back the same thing over and over and over again to try to get them to force your bill through? So Berkow was against this and said, we're not going to allow this unless there have been substantial changes to the bill. The Prime Minister gets around this by essentially saying, okay, fine, we'll extract the withdrawal agreement from the deal. Now, what this means is, and this is somewhat odd, but the Prime Minister was trying to get a win, any win. And in this, her mind was, all right, we'll extract the leaving portion of the bill while keeping the future relationship component of the bill to be voted on at some other point. Meaning, we'll move from this house, but no, we have no idea where we're going to go to after we move. The nature of the relationship between the UK and the EU was supposed to be expressed in this kind of secondary declaration. That part was ignored. Now, the oddity of this is that the withdrawal agreement is embedded inside the document. So the idea that you can extract it and make your vote becomes a little bit dicey. Nevertheless, that's what they put up for a vote. Now, if you also remember, Britain was supposed to be leaving today. Today was supposed to be the date that the UK was supposed to be leaving the European Union. The Prime Minister, in dealing with the European Union, was trying to get an extension. In trying to get the extension, she agreed that she will get something passed, meaning the withdrawal agreement. At the very least, this will be able to go through Parliament. She was not able to get this, meaning on April 12th, they're leaving the European Union. They're leaving the European Union because that's the only extension the European Union would give, because the European Union looked at it and says, what's the point? You can't get anything through. There is nothing that you guys have a majority to get through Parliament. You don't want the customs union. You don't want all of the indicative votes. Yeah, all of the indicative votes that came up, all of those were voted down. You didn't go for the Prime Minister's deal. You didn't go for a secondary deal. You didn't even go for a withdrawal agreement in and of itself, minus the other stuff. You can't get anything through. The Prime Minister has spent 2 years negotiating with the European Union. Maybe she should have consulted Parliament to make sure that whatever she was negotiating was going to be able to pass. Take a look at this. The wild part about this is I was going to do a completely different video, but the vote came up almost like maybe an hour ago or so. So this is still recent news. The Prime Minister loses again. And this is after her promising to give them her head if she leaves. I will touch my head and give it to you. Just please let something go through. Please, please, please let anything go through. And they said, or whispered, no. They whispered no. The people already know at this point that the Prime Minister is not going to be there for the next vote. That's the first point. Meaning, if they take this withdrawal bill, they have no idea who's going to be negotiating the secondary part. That in and of itself is problematic. BREXIT was supposed to take place today. And they still have no idea what BREXIT even means. In fact of the matter is, I don't know how you get out of this thicket without even going towards a general election. Without going towards a general election. The public is going to have to decide. I know people want a referendum, but a referendum kind of destroys this notion of democracy. If the public decides what it wants to do, it entrusts the government itself to enact their will, because after all, it is supposed to be a democratic representative government. And the government doesn't do it. And instead brings it back for a referendum in order to throw it back to the public as opposed to just doing their job. In this case, to be fair to the government itself, they're split 51-49, just like the public was split. And this is the chaos. Fact of the matter is, they're going to have to throw this back to the public one way or the other, because Parliament at this point has become, I'm not going to say useless, but it's not working in the way that it's supposed to. So let's listen to Theresa May. I want you to hear Theresa May's part because this is a somber, somber speech that Theresa May is going to do immediately after this vote. But let's hear the vote itself. Order! I love that.
The ayes to the right, 286. The noes to the left, 344.
The ayes to the right, 286. The noes to the left, 344. So the noes have it, the noes have it. Unlock. Point of order, the Prime Minister.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think it should be a matter of profound regret to every member of this House that once again we have been unable to support leaving the European Union in an orderly fashion. The implications of the House's decision are grave. The legal default now is that the United Kingdom is due to leave the European Union on the 12th of April, in just 14 days' time. That is not...
By the way, I forgot to mention something. The Parliament itself has said we don't want a no-deal Brexit. They wanted to vote that off the table. By the same token, no-deal Brexit is the default. That's not because the Parliament, Theresa May is making it the default. It is the default by definition of just our relationship between one another. We're supposed to come to a deal. We can't come to a deal, then I just walk away because we couldn't come to a deal. Well, what does that mean in the context of Britain and the European Union? Walking away means there's no relationship. It's a no-deal Brexit. No-deal Brexit is the default just by the basis of negotiation. Britain doesn't want that. By the same token, it can't come to a deal in any other kind of way. So they're coming up with contradictory rulings at this point. We don't want a no-deal Brexit. By the same token, we can't come to any agreement on a deal. This is a fascinating situation. I'm sorry to interrupt. Let her finish.
Enough time to agree, legislate for and ratify a deal, and yet the House has been clear it will not permit leaving without a deal. And so we will have to agree an alternative way forward. The European Union has been clear that any further extension will need to have a clear purpose and will need to be agreed unanimously by the heads of the other 27 member states ahead of the 12th of April. It is almost certain to involve the United Kingdom being required to hold European parliamentary elections. On Monday, this House will continue the process to see if there is a stable majority for a particular alternative version of our future relationship with the EU.
So on Monday, they're going to have another series of indicative votes. What that means is Parliament is going to take the reins in order to try to find a pathway through. Meaning if there's something that Parliament can agree on that it wants, even though the government may not necessarily be on board with whatever they're putting up, they're taking the reins for temporary, you could say, vote in order to try to get some kind of resolution. This is a very serious condition. What is going to take place here in the next month or so is going to determine the future of Britain for decades. And yet they don't know what that is yet. One last point on this. Oh God, I missed the point. Let me see. Theresa May was... I'll let her finish.
Of course, all of the options will require the withdrawal agreement. Mr. Speaker, I fear we are reaching the limits of this process in this House. This House has rejected no deal. It has rejected no Brexit. On Wednesday, it rejected all the variations of the deal on the table. And today, it has rejected approving the withdrawal agreement alone and continuing a process on the future. This government will continue to press the case for the orderly Brexit that the result of the referendum demands.
Point of order, Mr. Jeremy Corbyn. On a point.
They have no idea what's going to come next. This is not one of those things where, this is an orderly process where this step takes place and then the next, and people will kind of know what's going to happen. They don't know what's going to happen here. This is somewhat of an open case. They may crash out of the European Union. Now, in some case, if they're talking about a referendum, the Prime Minister is going to want the referendum to say no deal Brexit or my deal. Well, clearly, that's somewhat of a biased referendum case. You're scaring the hell out of the people with this idea of no deal Brexit. Also, the Prime Minister, to some degree, did this on purpose in order to get this down to the wire, but I don't think she realized or she believed that it was going to come to this. I think she thought this notion of a no-deal Brexit was going to be enough to scare them into voting for her deal. Not so much. She's lost control of her government. They have no idea what's going to come next. Her head is already on a platter, and even giving them her head on a platter, it's still not enough to entice the people to vote for this plan, even to get this half-truncated plan over the finish line. Let's hear Jeremy Corbyn's response to this. You can kind of already know where Jeremy Corbyn is probably going to go.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. This is now the third time the Prime Minister's deal has been rejected. When he was defeated the first time, the Prime Minister said it's clear this House does not support the deal. Does she now finally accept that the House does not support the deal? Because she seemed to indicate just now that she's going to return to this issue again. On Monday, this House has the chance, and I say to all members, Mr. Speaker, the responsibility to find a majority for a better deal for all the people of this country. Mr. Speaker, the House has been clear. This deal now has to change. There has to be an alternative found. And if the Prime Minister can't accept that, then she must go, not at an indeterminate date in the future, but now, so that we can decide the future of this country through a general election.
Point of order, Mr. Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We should all be aware.
Right honourable gentleman must be heard. Mr. Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We should all be aware of the responsibilities that we all have in this House, the seriousness of the situation that we are in. And I would say respectfully to the Prime Minister, she now has to accept that her deal has been defeated 3 times. And I applaud the members of Parliament on all sides that voted against the government's proposition. It is a bad deal. And we have to find a way out of the crisis that we are in. All of our constituents would expect that. We must give ourselves time. And I suggest to the Prime Minister, we now must look seriously at the option of revocation. We need to apply the handbrake to this process. And quite simply, Mr. Speaker,
you've messed it up.
The Prime Minister has failed to take this deal forward. She does not have the confidence of the House. The Prime Minister has indicated her departure. She should now go, and we should be having a general election.
Thank you.
His party didn't want Brexit anyway. And it was the saddest thing in the world to see week after week after week after week him standing up, complaining and bitching to the Prime Minister about the fact that Brexit has taken place. So you can imagine from his standpoint, he loves this. Any delay in Brexit leaves just that much more time for the possibility of Brexit being stopped or revoked. He loves this. The Remainers love this. Again, for the same reason. Any delay in Brexit, this wearing down of the public to the point where the public just says, screw it, I don't want to go through with it. Not because they necessarily changed their mind originally on Brexit itself, but more so along the lines we're just getting sick of this process. This has been going on for 2 years, and it's been sucking up all of the resources in regards to the time of the government itself. Theresa May comes out and attacks Parliament in a video, I think it was a week or so ago, which pissed off Parliament, the same Parliament that she needed to get to vote for this bill. It did not happen. She failed on this front. Nobody knows what's going to happen next. So I'll leave it here. I'm not going to keep this one long because I have another video that I wanted to do on this issue. And so I'm going to immediately go to that video. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through PayPal or Patreon. Also, please join us for our Patreon Appreciation episode that's going to take place 1 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. Those episodes have been awesome. And you can see the previous episodes by becoming a patron. I flattened Well, that's too much information, but even $1 helps. Of course, we prefer more, but even $1 helps. Thanks all. I see you in like 10, 15 minutes.